Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name's Oliver Nelson. I'm one of the senior business development managers here at Cobweb, and thanks again for coming along to this webinar about business voice. So my colleague Michael Gore, who's also a senior business development manager, is going to run through this presentation today. Michael's got vast experience in communications. His background is well, goes back a fair distance, back in the day of all sorts of PBX systems and working for Nortel, Siemens globally, and now has joined Cobweb to help transition our existing and new customers to Microsoft 365 and voice telephony in particular. So there's a handful of you in this webinar at the moment. Hopefully some more will attend in due course as things progress, but if you've got any questions, then feel free to interact either on the chat or just through sort of questions, and we'll go through them as we get them. So a little bit about business voice and the communications of what the buzzword, if you like, of unified comms. So historically, every customer or company has got some kind of communication tool, so that can be instant messaging, telephony, it can be a PBX system. We hear of services like Slack, 8x8, so kind of a varying landscape of what customers use. So that the concept with Microsoft and Microsoft Voice is we can, in essence, combine all of those together in one nice communication product, hence the phrase unified comms that I'm sure that you've heard bouncing around. So that's what we're going to run through today. Michael's going to show you some examples of where you might be at the moment with your communications. You might be on legacy systems. You might just want to simplify your services and use one vendor and one product, not having to switch between different instant messenger or conferencing products. WebEx, Zoom, all of these types of extra third-party products that you will be paying for. It all gets unified into Microsoft Voice. So what I'll do is I'll pass over to Michael, who will run through his presentation, like I said, on a bit of background, and then get deep dive into 365 Business Voice. And any questions, feel free to ask them, like I say, as we go through the presentation. Over to you, Michael.
So, hi everybody. Hope you can hear me. I have no way of confirming that. So let's just go and crack on. Can you hear me, Ollie? Okay. So good afternoon, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I should say. So thanks for that intro, Ollie. So I've got a number of slides here that give a background on where we are with Business Voice and where we've come from. It's not a particularly long webinar, but sufficient, I hope, to give you an insight as to what we've done, why we're doing it, and a bit of the legacy behind it. Ollie mentioned about existing, what you're likely to come across in the landscape. So there's three types, if you will. There's on-premise PBX. Typical exponents of that would be the likes of Mitel, Avaya, et al. There's a number of them. Why do people have them? It's a capital cost acquisition that is easily manageable if you have the right people, an administrator. More often than not, they would have call center functionality depending on what the requirement is. I often hear people talk about call center when, in point of fact, it's just call handling, via IVRs, automated attendants and IVRs. And of course, they're all proprietary solutions, but there's lots of them out there, and they all do very well. Coming up on the rails, if you will, is cloud telephony solutions. So that was something that was probably realistically introduced about 3 or 4 years ago. And there was a reluctance by the general market. There was an acceptance to take cloud services for virtually everything, except for telephony. based upon the fact that the connectivity wasn't great, calls dropped out, and so on. Well, of course, that's changed, and the adoption of cloud telephony has really taken off. There's many exponents of that as well. I'm thinking of the Ring Central, Vonage, 8x8, and so on. Even the Mitel have cloud-based solutions as well. Why would people go that way? Well, it's an operational cost. It's very quick to expand and turn down, depending on what the arrangement is, with generic IP phones to make it all come together. The other element is unified communications. And as Ollie said, I've been involved in telecoms for a while, quite a while, and people have always wanted unified communications, and to a certain degree have managed to achieve it. So they get the phone system and video conferencing and the things that you see on the slide. But the challenge has always been that it was fragmented, and you have a situation where a Mitel user, I use this as an example only, they can use the internal elements of Mitel. There's maybe an instant messaging capability, but you're going to have different providers supplying different things, especially if in the mobile world, when you want to try and make it work extended. I apologize for this thing popping up on my desk. Desktop, I just can't shut the blooming thing off. But anyway, there we go. But as it says on the slide, individuals are forced to mix models and technologies and devices. They're difficult. You have to manage all of these things. They are difficult. You can get them to work to a certain extent, but it's never been a real unified communications. And I think, getting back to my earlier point, unified communications not so much means different things to different people, but it's the ability to be able to share files, to involve people, have mobile connectivity, real mobile connectivity, but all within the same platform. And if you look at the telephony services today, you've got, you can have your soft clients with your Windows, iOS and Android, whether it be on a soft phone, whether it be on a mobile phone. You can have your switchboard attendants and call centers, different mobile phones. But as I said earlier on, they're all herded together to make a disparate but functional unified communication solution. With the introduction of Microsoft's Business Voice, that really has changed the landscape. So let's just take the business voice element of it first. Microsoft had to come up with a solution. They've had a phone solution in the enterprise world for some time, and it worked fine, depending on the size of the organization, but it never really addressed the 300 and below marketplace. And so they decided that they were going to develop a new solution. So it's not more of the same from the enterprise world. It's an expanded and developed function and capabilities that had to be as good as, if not better, than the players that were already out there. So you have a feature list which stacks up very, very well against the companies that I've already mentioned, whether they be in the cloud or whether they be on-premise solutions. And they had to do that, and they had to do it in a way that people could acquire it, which I'll get onto later, i.e. from a very simplistic point of view. What does it provide? Well, you get full PBX functionality, instant messaging, all the things that you see on the slide there, but all under the same tenant and within Teams. And what's really made all of this work is Teams. Many companies already within 365 use Teams, but they use it for peer-to-peer communications. And people have wanted to be able to introduce voice. Well, they can now, and they can do it directly from Microsoft with the Business Voice, or there are other solutions which allow people to maintain their existing infrastructure should they require to, whether it be from a contractual point of view, because they may be 2 or 3 years into a lease or whatever, or because there's maybe a call center element to it. In the feature set that is offered within Business Voice, there are sophisticated call handling features that are available, but it's fair to say it is not a call center. So if you have a requirement for a real call center, then this will not give you that solution, at least not today. What it will do is allow you to maintain or retain what it is you currently have but yet integrated into Teams. But I'll come on to that more as we go through this. If we actually get into the Microsoft Business Voice itself, the business voice element of it is a license. So if you're sitting in your 365 world with all the things that are associated with that, from Office through to Teams, as I mentioned, this introduces the business voice element to it, and it gives you the real opportunity to have an all-in-one communications, call it from anywhere. So whether I use calling and Teams exclusively from anywhere. So if I'm in my office here, as I am today in Fareham, or I'm in London, or I'm in Lisbon,
is now joining,
or anywhere else around the world, then I can make calls and take calls all from within my Teams tenant. I think somebody's just joined us. Good afternoon to who's just joined us. I was just making the point that with the introduction of the voice element into Teams, you have the ability to take your office anywhere you want it to be. So if you're in your hotel room in Hong Kong, or you're in your hotel room in Halifax, it really doesn't make any difference. Not only because it can be a Teams to Teams call, that's pretty straightforward within the Microsoft world, but with Business Voice, you can make your PSTN calls through Teams and utilize the minutes that come with the Teams license, sorry, with the Business Voice license. As though you're connected to the modern phone system within the premises. Communications from a single app. I'm looking here. This is a typical Teams screen, but you can see the keypad that's on the bottom behind the mobile. That's what you see. So if you go from the bottom to the top, you have files, calls, calendar, Teams, chat, and activity. Each one of those has, and I apologize if you guys are familiar with Teams anyway, but for those who are not, it gives you the ability to make a call or take a call or be on a call that I'm on now to do some kind of collaboration. So somebody may ask me a question that I don't have the answer for. So I can do an instant message, or I can bring somebody into that call. I can perhaps share a file. I can put that up on the screen. I can include, there may be a requirement to schedule a new meeting, so I can go into calendar within my Teams. All of this I'm on a telephone call, but go into the calendar and create a Teams invite, which will generate the Teams URL together with a dial-in number for those people that wish to do it. All of this with your contacts, which are synced through Active Directory, of course. And I think the other point as well is all about productivity, a bit of an overused term really. But in this instance, because you have it all encapsulated into one area, just getting things done is so much easier. I mentioned before about call from anywhere, but on any device. So I use my mobile with the Teams application on it constantly. Now you may have, so if I receive a call, if somebody rings my DDI, it'll come to my laptop that I'm looking at now, but of course it'll come to my mobile as well, and indeed anywhere else that I want it to go. I take that call, I have a conversation, I can do all the things that I've just mentioned that I could do on my laptop in terms of bringing other people in and conduct my business that way. At the end of that call, there may be a requirement for me to call the caller back, and I can do that through Teams. What's the benefit of that? Well, it stays within Teams, so it stays within the calling plan, which is included in the license. It also means, depending on what the company's protocol or procedures are for mobiles, that all calls are made through Teams. So the expense of mobile phones starts to not diminish, because there may be a contribution made, but instead of having to itemize all your calls that you make for business, everything goes through Teams. In terms of features, I've split them up here. This is not an exhaustive list at all, but it is a pretty good indication of what you can do, ranging from, call control, call forward, call park. I'm sure some people use call park. I do from time to time.
Is now exiting.
We have different hunt group capabilities. I mentioned about the attendant console and IVR. So all the things that you would expect on another manufacturer's on-premise or cloud-based system. From an administration point of view, you can set all of these things up yourselves. Thank you. I don't know why that's gone larger. Why did that go larger? You can set integrated calling plans, quality of service, and so on and so forth within the admin element of it. I've got something which is really squirrely going on here. There we go. Okay, thank you. In terms of devices, the default position seems to be these days that people use a headset on their mobile. It depends on the vertical that you're in, but of course some people still require a hard phone, and we have a range of hard phones which are Teams phone. So one of the questions that I'm asked from time to time is that can you utilize your existing IP phones? The answer is no, especially if they're proprietary ones. So, could you use your Cisco phone, your Mitel Avaya phone? No, you can't. If you had a generic one, so a generic IP Yealink phone, for example, then there is a possibility, but we don't actually support them. What we do have is a range, I think, of 3 or 4 handsets, which are Yealink, as it turns out, and of course meeting room devices as well, which is not a separate discussion, but there's a different meeting room license. But all the things that people currently do can be done from within Teams and specifically Business Voice. I mentioned earlier on about the different ways that you could get Business Voice to work, and we'll be talking more about the direct routing and call to Teams element of this in greater detail next week. But if you look on the left, you've got the vanilla, if you like, Microsoft Business Voice. So it's a straightforward license that gives you your calling minutes, which is, I believe, 1,200 minutes, landline and mobile minutes. It gives you audio conferencing, and it gives you your video conferencing. And that you can have that with a calling plan and without a calling plan. If you choose to take it without a calling plan, it's because you want to avail yourself of the functionality of Business Voice, but have an arrangement or a requirement to get your routing from somewhere else. So let's take, for example, direct routing. The calling plans that Microsoft offer are very attractive, and one of them is a bolt-on for international. However, if your business is very focused upon international, it may be that you could secure a better deal from a third party for the international element of it. So you could go to that company and they would supply you with your SIP trunking and a call plan, and they in turn will be pointed at Microsoft to complete the integration into Teams. That is an example of direct routing. You may also have a requirement to keep your existing infrastructure. So you've already got a PBX, whether it be hosted or on premise. It may have a call center application on it. You may be in a lease which has got a couple of years to run, but you do have 365 and Teams. Well, what you can do in this instance is have a call to Teams solution. So when a call comes in, it comes into the PBX or the existing platform and is delivered as normal to the handset or the individual that it was meant to go to. I'm thinking about DDI. But as that call comes in, elements of that call information, DNS information, is sent to the cloud to call to Teams, which in turn is integrated in the Azure space with Microsoft, and that gets delivered into the Teams element, so that when a call comes in, you have it effectively sent to your existing handset, because that's what you have within your infrastructure, but also into the laptop or indeed your mobile that you operate. But we'll speak in greater detail next week. There is actually another solution which we've just launched, which is called Trunk to Teams, which is a variation on a theme. But Trunk to Teams is where you decide that you want to get rid of your existing platform, end of life, that the direct routing option isn't required because the call plans are good enough, but you want to get your SIP trunks from someone else without the calling plan, and they in turn are connected or steered towards Microsoft. But as I said, we'll talk about that more next week. Next steps and any questions. I said that it will be short. So if you've got any questions, now is the time to ask them. I don't believe I can hear you, but can I hear these? No, I can't. So it will come up on a chat for me if you have any questions. In fact, let me give you my contact details. If you want to, it's michael.gore@cobweb.com, and my DDI, if you wanted to call me, is 0203 884 9302. That's 0203 884 9302. But as it says here, you can find out more about 365 with our free guide, which we'll happily send to you. There's a free teamwork assessment that we offer as well, and another webinar next week in greater detail in relation to the other elements. I think what I'd like to finish off with is to say that what Microsoft have achieved here, and I say this as you know, as a Cobweb employee, not Microsoft. Microsoft have come from behind the field with a solution that is more than acceptable compared to the other ones that are out there, arguably better than some. But with the integration into Teams, that's what really, that's the killer element of this, the fact that it's integrated into Teams, and you really truly do have at last unified communications.
Thanks for that, Michael. Like I say, if anyone wants to reach out to Michael with any questions, then feel free to do so. But thanks, Michael, and thanks for everyone attending today. All the best.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.